大家好。
大家好，你好。
嘿，大家好，大家好。要注意一下，要记得你们的麦克风要关掉，要静音，麻烦你们。Today we'll be doing a mix. There will be some 中文 and also 英文. We'll be using English and a little bit of Chinese too today, since we have an audience that represents a multitude of languages. And these video recordings will also be shared later on, as we've mentioned. Initially, these will be hopefully shared with as many communities around the area and around the country as possible. So to that end, I will be using a mixture of both 中文 and also English today. So thank you all. I'm looking around and I see most of us have our mics muted already, which is wonderful. That doesn't mean that you can't communicate with me. As I look over here at screen number 2, I have 3 screens ahead of me right now. I can see everything that you chat with me. There's a chat function for each and every one of you that you can use to chat either directly at any one person in this room, or you can also use that chat function to chat with everybody at one time. We do have a good number of our participants that are in, but we still have some more that are going to be joining us periodically. We're going to get started promptly, but if at any point, if you need to jump off, you're welcome to. And also know that we have a stop time of 6 o'clock, but our last hour will be a Q&A session. Our last 40 minutes will be a Q&A session. And during that time, we'll be answering any and all questions that you might have that you'll be chatting first. And then we'll be calling you out for you to voice your questions out loud as well. So in the meantime, we ask that you all just hang tight, and that if you have questions, it's really neat. You can do one of two things. You can chat your question out at us, or you can also raise a cute little blue hand. There's a little blue hand function if you want to raise your hand as well, which can be found down on your command bar. So feel free to use that if you have a particular question that's burning and you really want to ask it. But just know that I will be trying my best to answer your questions in the order that I receive them through chats. And again, we will have a 40-minute session at the very end of this webinar where we allow you all to take the floor and ask any questions you might have. We have a majority of our participants have logged on now. So I'm going to go ahead and do the formal start. More people will join us as time goes on here. I'm sure that there are some that are still trying to get logged in. If you know any of those and they're having trouble, we ask that you help them. I'll try to the best of my ability to also help them. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so my name is Jeremy Smith. I am the language team facilitator at the Westside School in West Seattle. I'm also the current president of the Chinese Language Teachers Association of Washington. Our organization is very happy to be able to support this amazing group of teachers that's joining us today, both here in Washington and, as I understand, around the country as well. We're really excited. If you see me looking over from time to time, it's to make sure I'm checking in on your chats and to let people get in if they get kicked out. If for whatever reason you lose your internet connection and you need to get back in, you'll be sent back to the waiting room. I'll be sure to get you back in as quickly as possible. So today, once again, the purpose of this training is to get everybody prepared for the weeks and months ahead of distance or remote learning. Right now, a lot of people will intermittently use the terms remote learning or online learning or distance learning. For the purposes of this presentation, you're going to hear me say remote learning a lot because it's not always necessarily everybody being online at the same time. So you might hear administrators and principals and headmasters talking with those terms. Just know that when we're talking about those things here in the particular case of our presentation today, I'll be using remote learning, but that can also be applied to online learning as well. All right. So, our schedule for the day is, as you can all see right now, if you're using an iPad, you may have to swipe your screen left or right to see the different screens. I should be the primary screen. You should be able to see a cascade of people that are participating. You should also be able to see another screen that I'm sharing with you. Right now, we're just taking a look at the schedule. So 4 to 4:10 here, we are going to talk a little bit about what asynchronous versus synchronous means. You're going to hear those terms a lot throughout the rest of the presentation. Just want to make sure everybody has a baseline understanding of what those mean. If at any point If it's not clear, or if it's shaky, or if I freeze up, or you need me to repeat something, you can also feel free to chat that over to me, and I'll be sure to clarify to the best of my ability. Okay. Today, the session really has three parts. The first part is to talk about synchronous learning platforms. And the second two parts, parts 2 and 3, are asynchronous learning platforms, and then a Q&A session for the last 40 minutes. Okay, you'll also, don't worry if you haven't had a chance to take a look at all of these tools mentioned here in the schedule. Don't worry, we have them listed all throughout the presentation. So you'll also have this presentation shared with you at the conclusion of this webinar today. So a couple of things that we need to be very clear on. As you noticed in the email that got sent out to you, there are 3 webinars, 3 different sessions that are addressing 3 different parts of this process, of the learning process for teachers. In the same way that we scaffold for our students, and we try to differentiate by our experience and our levels and our understanding of different things, we're going to try and do the same thing with these 3 sessions. So today's session is about the basics. It's about getting you up and running with a familiarity of what tools are out there. Obviously, I have 136 tools that I have in my arsenal personally. And of those, I've decided, because of time constraints, I've chosen the 6 that I find to be the most effective. Most of them are free. There are a few that are not, and we'll make sure to tell you which ones those are throughout the presentation today. But what we want to remember is that by the end of this presentation, our goal is for today's presentation, is to get the basics and to be able to use a few powerful but really accessible tools to help you in your remote learning experience here in the next few weeks. What we won't be doing today is diving into advanced functions and nuance. Every one of these things can be tweaked, and you can be very creative with all of these. These are empty canvases. You can paint with them however you want. But today we're going to just talk about the basics. But on Tuesday, if you'll be joining us on Tuesday, or if you're unable, we'll also have that recording posted. We'll be going in a little bit deeper into how you can do some really cool and creative things with these tools. But for today, just know that we're going to get an intro into a lot of different things. And at the very end, you'll have a chance to ask any questions you might have. All right. So first question, what is synchronous remote learning? Forgive me for just talking at you here, but in the interest of time, I'm just, instead of bouncing it out to the group as I normally would as a question for everybody to kind of answer, I'm just going to tell you. So synchronous learning in this context, in remote learning, is what we're doing right now. So we are on Zoom. We are in real time. You can hear me. I can hear you. We can communicate back and forth. We can share ideas, thoughts, and opinions. These are things that are happening in the moment with little or no delay. So the first section of today's presentation is specifically about that. We're going to be talking about synchronous learning tools, things that you can do in the moment with your students to connect in that particular moment. Keep in mind, and I will also make mention of the tools that have multiple functions, but some tools and platforms can also be used asynchronously. So you can use them both in real time or asynchronously with a delay. So when your students are learning on their own. Just a reminder that throughout the presentation, this is going to be a lot of me talking, and then you're going to have a lot of chance to talk at the very end. So in the meantime, just remember to keep your mics muted, and we will make sure to give you a chance to talk towards the end. Okay. All right. So asynchronous remote learning, or I'm sorry, synchronous remote learning. The tools that we're going to be looking at for this section here are specifically Zoom, ClassKick, Padlet, Explain Everything, MS Whiteboard, Microsoft Whiteboard, and OneNote. There will be links in the presentation for those of you that are interested in jumping right in and don't want to have to do a bunch of searching. We'll have those links in the presentation that will be put up on the CLTA-WA.org website at the conclusion of the presentation. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. This is the easiest one because we're using it right now. You all are currently using Zoom. This is a fantastic tool that has the benefit right now of being free for use for educators. The wonderful people over at Zoom usually have a restriction on the number of, on the total amount of time that you can have a session. Right now it's unlimited. We'll be able to use this, usually it's 40 minutes. We'll be able to do this whole 2-hour session courtesy of those fine folks over at Zoom. The learning curve, as with all of these things, I'm gonna give you guys just a brief rundown. This isn't fully comprehensive, but Your learning curve for this is intermediate. So this is not step right into it. There are some bells and whistles that you'll have to learn to use, but it's also not the hardest thing in the world to use. You can actually see up on my screen right here, my general toolbar, all the things that I have control of over here. While you guys are on your end, you do have some control over your mic and your camera, but so do I. If at any point, for example, in a classroom, if a student if we're conducting a session, I also make it known to the student that if they're not being respectful, in the same way that in class time we would have expectations for classroom behavior, it's the same in this. So we remind students that if at any time they are not meeting those expectations, then the cameras can be turned off, the mics can be turned off. And we also remind the students that most of our sessions are recorded. So it's important, just like in real life, that you're putting your best foot forward and you're presenting professionally, and that you're being accountable to yourself and to the rest of your community, especially since there is a permanent record of your conduct. A few really, really neat things about this in particular. You also have this function right now. If you had a question for whatever reason, you would be able to raise a hand. Each of you has the ability to actually raise a little blue hand. So you can actually try it right now. If you take a look down at your own command bar, so if you tap on your screen, if you're on an iPad, you'll actually see, yeah, there's some people raising their hands. They see the emojis. Those hands let your teacher know that you have something to say without having to unmic. If all 30 of you right now had your mics undone, my ears would explode. And I make sure that we're telling the thumbs up to you as well. So I make sure to let the students know that this is something that is done not only for efficacy to make sure that we're using our space efficiently, but it's also done for the benefit of allowing me to give them timely feedback and meaningful feedback in an orderly fashion. So again, it's kind of like your first day of class. So when you're using a synchronous tool like Zoom like this here, always start with basic expectations and just assume that when you're starting out, it's just like going back to day one of school. So you really do, you have to lay those guidelines down and make sure that kids understand those expectations. So a couple of things here. So the nice thing about some of the pros about this, Zoom can be used synchronously and asynchronously. So right now we're using it synchronously. So you're able to respond to me in real time. However, not all teachers and not all students have this ability. So many of you may be in a school district where it's just not possible. You can't, your students don't have readily available laptops or iPads. They have intermittent access to it. Maybe they can only get in sometimes. So the nice thing about Zoom is that even if we can't do this synchronously, I can also, as I'm recording this right now, everything I'm sharing on my screen, all the work that I'm doing, websites that I'm showing, narrating stories, if you're doing a story ask, or if you're doing a read through, if you're doing calendar corners, whatever it might be at whatever level you're at, you can do those recordings and then you can actually download, edit, and then you can post those to whatever learning management system you have. You can just put them on YouTube on an account that you share with their parents. So there's a lot of things that you can do other than just the synchronous functions of this. So one of the wonderful things as a language teacher for this too is we don't get a ton of time to see all of our students' faces all at one time as they're grasping, as if we're doing exercises in interpersonal communication, for example. The nice thing about this is Zoom can also allow you to section people off in groups. You can section kids off into smaller groups where they can work together. One of my favorite things about this as well is if you do have the benefit of being able to use this with your kids in real time, there's a lot of really, really great exercises that you can do with patterning and parroting, getting kids to make sure that they are watching the way that you move your mouth, not just the sounds that you are making. So it actually has a lot of benefit that you might not normally be able to, things that you might not be able to do as effectively in a normal classroom situation, you can actually do quite effectively in this situation. There are some difficulties for this though. The biggest difficulty being if you are a lower school teacher, if you are a primary school teacher, the learning curve can be quite steep for a younger child, especially if they don't have adults able to help them as readily as you might think. Sometimes their guardians may feel very comfortable and sometimes they might not. Sometimes there may not be access to that kind of technology. And so just know that the learning curve can be a little steep for younger ages. With your typically 4th, 5th, 6th, all the way up through high school, the learning curve isn't quite as steep. And so you'll see kids jump into it a little bit more readily. I teach 5th through 8th grade, and so I've gotten to coach and help kids through this process at all those different age levels. And all of them, they get there. And it doesn't take too much time. And in fact, it probably takes the teacher a little bit longer to get used to because you have more functionality on your side, just more things you can do. For them, it's as simple as logging on and raising a hand and chatting every once in a while. Okay, today, we are going to be spending a little bit more time on those things like Zoom and others that are currently free. You'll see me make mention of other platforms that perhaps they have paid functions. They might be free at a basic level. But we're going to be spending a little bit more time on these things that everybody could jump into right now if they needed to, provided that their communities have at least some limited access to technology. If your community doesn't have any access whatsoever to limited technology, that's a different conversation that we would love to at some point have with you, and we can try and find ways to find support for that. But today we're really looking at those programs that would at least serve as a community that had at least a bare minimum of technological access, be it cell phone or a smartphone or a tablet of some kind, or even just a basic laptop. Pretty much all of these work even on the most basic of devices. For example, the next platform. So in the same way that we do synchronous conversation, and we can have these types of meetings here through Zoom, it's not always necessary. We're not always working in the interpersonal speaking mode. So if we're trying to work in the interpersonal writing mode, or even in the presentational mode, or we're just trying to do interpretive exercises, you can consider using something like ClassKick. Zoom, one of the things that should also be mentioned is right now, there was a limit put on the number of people that could attend today, because in my experience, when you start getting upwards of 30, especially at this time, you can experience some breakdown in the connection. Now, most of you right now have your videos off. So for the most part, we're okay. But as soon as those videos go on, for example, during Q&A, or if people are coming on and off, you'll see that there will be a little bit of a breakdown. And so just expect some limitations in terms of bandwidth for video, and just know that there are other resources available if you're not able to use these higher end video products. So again, that brings us back to ClassKick. Some of you may have seen some presentations that I've given before, so you may have seen that, or you may be using this already in your own class. This is a product that was developed by teachers for teachers. It's a wonderful group of people that continue to do this, an ongoing project for many years, developing this, making it better for teachers across multiple disciplines. I've been using this in my own class for 5 years. This is a very simple program that has a lot of functionality. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a look into it. Just know that it is free, which is a beautiful thing. I have the learning curve as an intermediate learning curve, but just know that it actually, for the students, I could also put that at a low. It really doesn't take students that long. It usually takes my students, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, first time they use it, takes them about 2 days really to get used to it, and then they're up and running. It's pretty straightforward. So when we're looking at ClassKick though, I'm gonna go ahead and pull over an example of what this can look like. Okay. So as you can see right now, the good people at ClassKick, like many other organizations, are making pro versions of this free for teachers. Just know that this has 2 different tiers. It does have a pro version and has a basic version. The basic version has all the basic functionality. You just get a couple extra things when you're in pro that allows you to organize class folders and whatnot. But I used basic for the first couple years with no hindrance towards my productivity in class. It is, if you have a large course load, if you have 5, 6 classes, pro can be helpful. But if you only have a couple of different sections, then it's very manageable. So right now you can message them, and they'll let you know that you can, if you're eligible for getting that free, the free pro upgrade. But if you, for whatever reason, weren't able to, just know that the basic version is also very, very usable. So logging in as a teacher, this is one of those nice things where most of the programs I'm going to show you today have both a laptop version, and then you can also access on the iPad as well, or if you have a tablet, you can use another tablet. I typically will navigate from the tablet. That's just out of personal preference. I use my iPad for a lot of things. I use my stylus for a lot. I like to create on that. But if you feel more comfortable operating from a laptop, just know that it looks a little bit like this. The dashboard is very, very simple. It's divided into assignments, rosters, notifications. You can, again, if you're in the pro version, you can organize by folders. The really, really nice thing about this here is when you are going into your classes, you have the option of creating a class that is either just a blank template, so it's just basically a whiteboard that you're putting out there, and then every student sees what you write on your whiteboard. So at any point, I can go in and I can take a look and I can see who's logged in. So right now, all my student needs to have is the link to this ClassKick page, or the code, just the code, and they can go to classkick.com anytime and log in. It's a very simple process for the kids. But at any given time, I can see, as I can see right now, I have students that are logged in. The kids that are lit up right now, they're in there doing their homework as they speak. And this does this Lauscher very proud. So to jump in and see exactly where they have needs, the kids can raise their hands. You can see what they're working on at any given time. If I wanted to go ahead and take a look here, hop back over to the main screen. Reason being, if you notice any delay, that's mostly because I'm taxing my systems a lot right now by showing you as much content as I'm showing you at one time. But typically speaking, runs very smoothly, very quickly. Right now, it's just going to run a little slower because I'm mirroring on 3 screens. Students, you'll also notice there in the top right corner, it says there's a student that is trying to chat. So in terms of this being a great tool in terms of creating asynchronous and synchronous communication between teacher and student, the student, you can create this assignment and let them do it at their own pace. You can also have the student very easily can go to you through the chat function, and they can get answers to any questions that they might have as well. So we'll go ahead and pull up something. This is from a brand new student. This student, their work, one of the nice things about this is a one-to-one system. So students can see what I put on the whiteboard. Everybody can see whatever I've written on the whiteboard. And the nice thing is that nobody else can see what is being written on theirs except for me. So for those students that maybe have problems with a high effective filter, maybe they're embarrassed or they don't want to let other people see their work, this is a really, really great tool, both in remote learning and in your daily practice as well for students to be able to. So for this, for example, we had a dictation where the students had to try and, as I was saying it in Chinese, they had to translate in real time into English. So again, you can load in. All of this was created on Microsoft Word and then just saved as a PDF. Any image or PDF can be loaded as a lesson onto ClassKick. So in terms of setting expectations for students, very, very straightforward. As you can see here, there's 25 pages on that. If you have a PDF with all of your lesson materials, your whole unit, I upload my unit all at once, and then each day I just tell the students which page to go to. They can do their learning contracts, they can set their goals. As you can see, there's a number of activities, talk grades, things like that. All things that kids can be kept accountable. And it takes me between 5 and 10 minutes to get everything posted. So it's very low effort. Again, great space for organization to make sure that the kids are tracking both their progress and their proficiency over time. It's easy for them to go back and have everything organized in one place as well. So as far as getting ClassKick set up, all you really need, just an email address. When you're setting up your classrooms, it's very intuitive, very, very straightforward. And the folks, again, if you have any questions during that process, the people at ClassKick are incredibly responsive. They are very kind and their customer service is top notch. To create any assignment though, it's as easy as just hitting that plus button. And then you can do from a file, you can upload a PDF. And there's also, this is really nice too, it's a teaching community that people share all their resources. So you can actually go and take a look at what assignments other teachers have posted before you. So there's other templates that you can use as well, which is really, really nice. Or if you just want to use it as a whiteboard and you don't want to upload anything, just use it as a whiteboard. It's quite intuitive that way. Okay. So you'll see different areas too. You can search by grade and by subject type and whatnot, which is really nice too. The nice thing about this is it doesn't, there again, the learning curve is pretty low, and you don't have to have a lot of other ancillary resources. So you don't have to have other programs that plug in. If I wanted to create something from scratch, I can do that. If I want to make recordings, so again, asynchronous learning, maybe we don't have the option to be one-on-one like this, but I still need my students to hear me reading a story. They don't necessarily need to see me reading it, but they need to hear me. I can do very simple in any one of these. And again, all students can see what I'm putting on here. I can add any number of things. I can add pictures if you want to do a picture talk or a PQA about those pictures. If you want to do personal question asking about that, you can do prompts where the students have to respond to what's going on. Let's see here. You can add your recordings of yourself. So it really is, it's a blank tool. And like I said at the beginning of this presentation, we're not going to go into like every single type of activity you can do. We will go more into that on Tuesday, but just be aware that this is the kind of tool that you have available to you. So if you have questions on how to use that, just know that we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end, but then we're going to really dive into how we can use this effectively on Tuesday as well. And then there'll be more recordings at that time. Okay. Let's see here, a couple other people joining us. Next up, we have Padlet. So Padlet is another one. And in the same way that ClassKick has a nice little chat function, that chat function really only goes one-to-one. That's between the teacher and the student. So when a student has a question and they chat back and forth, it's great for me to be able to give them real-time feedback, but it's not very good for crowdsourcing. So if you want to have a discussion that is, revolved around the entire community, it's not the best. It's really more for that teacher to student communication. Padlet is a really, really wonderful option for interpersonal communication, specifically interpersonal writing, which is one of those modes that we might not get a lot of chances to do on a regular basis. Some of us probably more than others, depending on your school and your curriculum. But this is a great way, regardless of your curriculum, to work in great exercises and great interpersonal communication. So Padlet can be used asynchronously or synchronously. So you can be there in real time with students, or you can leave a topic and then let them discuss at their own pace as well. Just like ClassKick. ClassKick, you can be there with them in real time. You can see what they're doing when they do it. Padlet's the same. So you can see what they're doing while they do it, or you can fire and forget. You can say, you guys work on this and I'll be back in 2 hours or tomorrow to check in on what you were able to accomplish. Just like ClassKick and with Zoom, it can be used on tablets, on iPads, and on your general computers and laptops. It is easy to use, just like ClassKick, where you can put in links and pictures and videos in the app. You can also do the same thing in Padlet. The nice thing about this as well is that you can also trust that the kids are going to be able to jump into it very quickly. The interface is very, very simple. There's not a lot of features to it, but that's kind of the beauty of the program. So that's a lot of concept talk, but to actually take a look at it, I'm going to actually open up just an example room. This is just a simple example. But if we just created just a simple chat room for students, I can post any number of things. As you can see on this wall here, I've posted a picture and around that picture, that becomes the focal point for our conversation. If I'm doing calendar corner, if I just want to see if the kids, not only, because every day in class we might say, 今天几月几号, or 今天是几月几号, or if we say 星期几,今天是星期几. It's great to hear students go back and forth and talk about that. But what about, also doing that through interpersonal writing as well? This is a great way to do that focal point. I actually have my amazing lower school Mandarin teacher counterpart, and Tian Lao Shi is on here with us as well. Kathy Tian is also on this as well. So if I posted something to Kathy, I just Kathy might be on, and Kathy might not be on. So the nice thing about this is students right now during this particular period of learning, they may have a broken schedule of their own. They may be in different places. They may be able to sit down at a particular time to work with you. They might not. So apps like ClassKick and Padlet are really lovely in that when that student is ready, if they're here, they'll be able to respond in real time. And if they're not, that's okay. They'll also be able to respond when they're ready. As a teacher, I can go in there. Oh, and there's Tian Lao Shi. Hey, ni hao. So you'll see that the students are able to get on there pretty quickly, which is pretty awesome. Now, this can be used in a lot of different ways. It can be used for general conversation, like we said with Calendar Corner, if you want to give them a topic or picture talk. So you give them a prompt or a picture and you ask them to have a conversation revolving around that. But it can also just be used as a way to allow students to have free conversation as well. Being able to do, non-directed or non-targeted learning is also really powerful at this time. This is a great time to encourage kids and to empower them to, especially in language learning, to be using that in their home, on the home front, to be able to use that language in a space that will help them reroute those neural pathways so that it normalizes the language and makes it a language that they feel should and could be used on the home front as well. This is a great resource for that. So again, on Tuesday, we'll go into some more applications and some fun things that we can do with this particular program. Okay, so moving along here, we're at 4:32, which means that we are on time. We're doing a great job. And I know this is a lot. I'm sorry to have everybody drinking through a fire hose on this one. I know it's a lot of information at one time, but please know that we will circle back around during the Q&A. And on Tuesday, we're going to dive a little bit more into some practical uses and applications. Okay. A couple of things here about Padlet. So the pros are obvious. They're, the potential is limitless for the amount of things that you can do, but there are some things to keep in mind. For primary level students, to use synchronously can be difficult. To have an expectation that they're going to be communicating through typing is probably not that reasonable. Now, sharing handwritten things through pictures, maybe. But again, this might be something for the lower levels that, over time, when they can do things at their own pace, can be really, really powerful. So just setting those expectations appropriately, depending on their age level, I wouldn't discount something like this for the younger ones, but also setting those expectations fairly is super important here. This may be something that you find more effective for grades 4 and beyond, or grades 5 and beyond. Also, the other thing is it's wonderful that it's free. You can use 3 of those Padlets at any given time, and you can cycle the content in and out. So you can erase the content and put new content and use it into infinity if you want. But you really only have those 3 unless you upgrade. So if you upgrade, then you have a unlimited amount of Padlets, and you can you can go back and forth. So if you want to go back to something you talked about a week ago, you can go back to it. You don't have to worry about rewinding it. So for I see a couple of questions here. So do you need to sign in for ClassKick with their own email and sharing links? So for Padlet and for ClassKick, this is what's really, really lovely about both of these programs, is you can see that for a teacher to share, it's really, really straightforward. I can share the link with them, You can also create a group, and through that group students can access. But yes, and we'll talk about, obviously you can email things to students, but we'll also talk later on about where you can organize some of these links and where students can go to find those things in an organized fashion as well. But yes, having a link is how students would access this, and then they would need to sign in with their name and their email as well. For ClassKick, going back to that for just a second, for a student to be able to access a class, if you have the pro version, they can sign in through their class email, whatever email that your school uses, but you don't have to have that. For years, I just used what many students still use, which is just a link or a code. So if a kid logs into classkick.com, all they need to know is, I can show you what it looks like on an app as well. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and show you all my screen on my iPad. So you can see this in just a second. I'm going to stop sharing this screen for just a moment. And you're going to see, I'll share my iPad screen with you in just a second here. So again, all of these things can be used on iPad. They can also be used on your standard laptop. So if I were on ClassKick, for example, ClassKick is very, very intuitive. A student can log in with that information. If they log into classkick.com, AASQSS, it will randomly generate a code. All they have to do is go to classkick.com, put in that code in their name, or if I copy that link and send them the link, it'll preload the code for them, and then they can just type in their name. It's pretty straightforward. Again, I do this with grades 5 through 8, and our lower school teacher has done it with our 4th graders as well. And the kids, they do a really good job of taking to it pretty quickly. Even newbies, even kids that come in with very little or no experience to this. As simple as clicking a link and typing in your name, really. The same can be said of Padlet. So Padlet, if you're looking at it from a tablet, you'll see that the user interface for the kiddo, or for yourself if you're using an iPad or a tablet, it looks identical. It's an app, it's super clean and crisp, and the sharing capabilities are the same as well. So it looks exactly the same. So if I'm sharing it with kids, I can do that. I can also add members. So if I have their emails, I can do all in one list at one time, and I can create a group as well. That way is another great way of allowing kids in. Okay. Again, there's the number of uses for this. We'll go into it on Tuesday, but it really is, it's limitless. It's pretty amazing what you can do. Okay, so there is Padlet. All right. Next up, we have Explain Everything. So Explain Everything, we'll go back. Actually, I'm going to keep it right over here on my iPad because you can see it right here. This is Explain Everything. Hopefully you all can still see that. Okay. Try this one more time. Okay. So Explain Everything. Very simple interface. This is a lot like Padlet in that you have a total of 3 different projects that you can run at any given time. It's actually quite generous for them to, offer those 3 projects. For those of you that don't want to upgrade to the next version, it's very usable even without having to upgrade. So for me, I don't use the upgraded version. I just cycle out old assignments, and then I create new assignments in place of the old one. So I just download a PDF version of the old one, so I have record of it, And then when I'm done, I can just download it and then create a new one. So the beauty about this is on any one of these projects, for example, in my class, we do a lot of story asking. So we do a lot of improv storytelling in the language. We're using the target language 95% of the class. And so part of this is students giving its call and response, and it's giving students a chance to do these things. Now, that might seem really hard to do when you're in a distance learning or remote learning situation. The nice thing about this is if I have the benefit of being able to, my kids have devices with something like Explain Everything, while you are, in the same way that you're all looking at my screen right now, you can see exactly what I'm drawing. So if we're telling a story, I say, 好，那有一个男生，那这个男生叫什么名字？你说，哦，这个男生叫 Bob。哦，好，那这个男生叫 Bob。那男生高不高？哦，他很高。哦，很高。They do.
Jeremy, we can't see your screen.
Oh, did we lose the screen? Give me a second here. Oh, sorry. Zoom. I'm running simultaneous Zooms between both of these, so give me just a second. Pop back on. I'm testing the limits of Zoom by having so many devices going. Let's see here. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear and see my iPad screen now? You can give me a thumbs up in the app.
We can't see your iPad screen. We can only see you.
Okay. No worries. We'll switch back over to just the laptop then. I won't tempt the fates trying to run too many things at once. Okay. Now we should be able to see the presentation again. So we're back over on my computer. So with Explain Everything, and I'll pull it up on the computer so you can see it here too. Again, this nice thing is you can use this on either platform. So Explain Everything can be used very nicely from an iPad, but you can also use it from your home computer as well, which is really nice. I prefer to use it on my iPad because I do a lot of drawing. So when we're doing story asking, it's just easier for me to use my iPad. As you can see, you can sign in, you can create your own password and username, or for me, I use a lot of things on Google, a lot of my platforms, online learning platforms. I like to keep connected through Google because so many of them, because they do so much work within the education sector. So for me, being able to sign in between all those platforms through my Google account is really quite nice. So in just a moment, you'll see what the user interface looks like. So the user interface, very clean, and the nice thing is the iPad or your tablet and what you see here, they look pretty much the same. Okay, so let's dive in. There we go. Okay. So if I were doing, just a simple story ask session, the nice thing is Explain Everything has an abundance of templates that you can use, which are really nice. So if you are a little hesitant about having to create your own your own templates in other applications or in other software, they do have some things that you can preload, which are really, really nice as well. So Explain Everything, again, as you may have noticed in the presentation, is one of those tools that you can use synchronously or asynchronously. So if you have the benefit of having kids that can sit in front of a device and be learning at the same time you're instructing, that is great. But if not, you'll notice down at the bottom that there's also a record function. So anything that is done, so if kids aren't able to log in, or maybe or maybe you think that there's just going to be bumps in the schedule and you won't be able to align their schedule with your instructional schedule. You can record your audio down here on the bottom. You can record audio and whatever content you're adding to the lesson at the same time. So when you're done, you can download that video and you can post it to YouTube, and you can deliver that through email or through a learning management system like a Google Classroom or a Canvas or a Haiku or PowerSchool. You can use a lot of different ways of getting that to them. The nice thing is that if you do have access and your students do have the ability to go on and to learn along with you, you'll notice up at the top right corner that I have myself logged in twice, once as a student and once as a teacher. But everything I'm doing, the students can see in real time. And they can also make comments. And you can also turn on accessibility for them to be able to draw on the screen as well, which is really, really nice. So your class sizes as well, you can add a whole class. Again, the real limitation here is that you can only create 3 different concurrent projects at a time. So the limitations there are really just being able to do one project, one assignment, one lesson, one activity for each grade level. If you have more than that, then you'd have to be creative in when you're being able to use that, and maybe having a staggered schedule if you have multiple grade levels that you would want to use it with at the same time. If you did need to upgrade, you may have noticed the pricing is pretty affordable. It's not something that would break the bank by any means, but depending on your situation, you can also use it without having to upgrade, and it can be still quite useful. So in addition, this is just like ClassKick in that you can add videos and you can add pictures, and you can link to other websites through here that kids can access, which is really, really nice. And the layout for you as a teacher is really clean and intuitive. So being able to, all of your tools, that is literally the extent of your tools right there. So you don't have to, the learning curve in terms of like functionality and whatnot is pretty baseline, pretty bare. You can also, it's really nice, you can actually have music in your lesson as well, which is really cool. I use a lot of music in my classes. I have different music, even in online remote learning, different phases of the lesson, I'll be using different types of music in the language, of course, but different tones and tenors and whatnot. So you can actually do that here too. So it's nice for me to be able to continue that continuity of what we would do in the physical classroom while being in the digital space. You still preserve some of those cool multiple modes of learning, for those kids that maybe are a little more musically inclined. So this is, again, some of you may be asking, what's the difference? Explain Everything is better than VoiceThread. That's a really good question. I would also throw EduCreation into the mix. There are quite a few tools like this. ClassKick is another one that are one-to-one or P2P whiteboard apps, which are really nice. If you're asking for an opinion statement on that, Explain Everything versus VoiceThread, I would say I definitely prefer Explain Everything between the two. I think there's just the functionality is a little more robust, and I think it's cleaner. I think it's a cleaner user environment for the kid and also for the teacher. It feels a little bit, yeah. So again, you see, there's so many apps out there that you can use and websites like this that you can use. What I've done is consolidate these down into the ones that offer the most functionality, that the cost is either the lowest or is non-existent, depending on your usage, and that can be accessed by as many kids as possible. That's probably the biggest thing, is it's balance. Right now, you're going to be probably inundated. A lot of people trying to tell you, oh no, this is better, that's the best, and you can make that decision on your own. There's also a lot of people selling things right now, and so this is more of a curated list of, after years and years of using all these different programs and platforms. This is from this person's perspective. So you are also, during the Q&A, if you have other things that you think maybe are more effective, please feel free to share those with the community. The point of this presentation today is to share. Nobody has the perfect answer for everything, but yeah, we can come up with some pretty good answers in these situations. So next, we're doing good on time, but we do want to move on towards, we're getting towards some of those ones which I have much time on, and we're also going to be looking at some purely asynchronous modes of instruction. So those teachers that your kids aren't able to do in real time. So we're going to look at some of those. Either you could actually use to instruct them in real time. Okay. MS Whiteboard is one of those. So MS Whiteboard, it functions in a very similar way to Explain Everything. The caveat here is that it is cost prohibitive. If you have from Microsoft and you have a Microsoft account, congratulations. This is a wonderful tool. What you're able to do on here in terms of kids into a classroom to see things in the same way that you would see things like what you saw in Explain Everything. There's really, really great functionality in this too, and then being able to add classes and keep things organized. It's kind of the hallmark of all Microsoft products. The organization is being able to organize your lessons and materials. That would be the biggest selling point for Microsoft Whiteboard. It pairs really well with everything else most teachers are using Office Suite to develop the curriculum. So it's to make it really seamless. But the problem there is, not everybody has access to them. And so the reason I put this towards the end of this section is because that you have access to that suite. Not everybody does, unfortunately. But if you do, I highly recommend it. If you haven't started using it already, it's wonderful. And honestly, I'll say the same thing about the next tool, which is OneNote. So Classic, what I showed you earlier, is very much kind of a scaled down version of OneNote. And OneNote is, as you can see there in the tabs, you can organize by class, unit, lesson, activity. So it's got a nice flow. It flows from one to the next. Right now, you can see that all the time. You can links, you can plug in videos, you do all kinds of really cool things. We'll show you links at the very end. This presentation will have all the links that you can click. Somebody just asked about it. You find yourself being a listener, because sometimes in your hard work across, when you have so many different platforms, you're trying to keep your brain straight on where things put and what links went out. So other things can be, if you have benefit of being on the suite of Microsoft, it's really nice. If not, then I'd say use a lot of those tools earlier on. But if you do have Microsoft, wonderful. I recommend both Whiteboard and Note. Okay, so synchronous. So now section, whether it is spoken and you see your teacher and you can see your students, or whether it is an environment where they're typing or writing to each other in real time, they're really awesome things happen. They're not something that everybody has the advantage of being able to access. And so this section is really about asynchronous remote learning, which really boils down to if you can't schedule lines, if you're in a situation where your school doesn't come up with a firm schedule, or maybe it's kind of shaky schedule, not sure when your kids are going to, or you don't know how much time they'll have to do things. There's thousands of questions that minds right now because every school's handling different, every system is handling very differently with very little support. So these next tools here are really, if you don't want to be able to get the device to use things, they're going to become really tools that you use. Keep in mind, all the tools other than really classic, they have recording functions. Zoom recording functions, explain everything recording Microsoft Windows and Word, Padlet, text for you as well. So Padlet and class will be disqualified here. But you're recording what you're doing in lessons to be posted on YouTube. So keep that in mind. So some of those can also be counted as asynchronous learning. So Google Classroom, Ed Puzzle, Kahoot, YouTube, Sharon Science Readers, and then sort of independent resources as well. It's on the time recommending with them if you're looking at those resources. The reason that I'm limiting is against this section, there are even more potential resources than would have been in the section. So I called this down to just a handful of really essential, very versatile, flexible tools. Some of them you've probably heard of. I'm sure most of you have heard of Quizlet, Kahoot, or if you haven't, that's okay. Some of you have probably heard of Ed Puzzle. Some of you probably heard of Flipgrid. Most of you probably heard of Google Classroom. The reason I Google Classroom on here is some of us in our school systems have access to learning management systems. And I think Google Classroom is really accessible to all. Basically, anybody can create a Google Classroom. If you get an email address, you can put this together. This is the bar to entry is very low. So to be able to go in and provide a space for kids, which I'll show you ours in just a second. It's very, very simple. If you never put anything on a learning management system before, the learning curve is extremely reasonable. It's not super low, but it's also not overly difficult. So this for use and so many educational platforms because of all the work that goes done with schools across the country. So you can find most of the apps and things that we talked about on them, they play in beautifully, really nicely. So in terms of what that looks like practice, all those links, all those codes, all things where you're like, oh my goodness, how am I supposed to manage this and so it's usable for my kids so that they're not swimming links and codes, because it can become very quickly if you're not careful. The nice thing about this is with Google Classroom, there it is. With Google Classroom, you can really make it whatever you need it to be. So you can make it as complicated, as complex, or simple and clean as you want it to be. This is an example of our lower school. Our school, this is their first time, whereas our middle school at Westside, we do a lot of things on a regular basis. We have a hybrid model where the kids, they were streamlined in pretty quickly. Like we didn't lose a lot because of how much we've been doing beforehand. But for lower school kids, you're scaffolding up, and so we try to dip their toes in the water with tech and then build them up to it. But this situation is obviously required that we accelerate that quite a bit. So our lower school teacher, Kathy Tien, has done just a magnificent job of getting kids who had not yet really been in Google Classroom and using it and creating content and sharing content and doing some really amazing things. So I'm going to go ahead and skip through that. As you can see, kids are super impressed. They're having a good time. But just taking a look at how it's organized, when a kid comes in, most of us are familiar with Google products. To post something, to post a new assignment is really, really straightforward. As you can see, Kathy in one page here has a comment section where kids are really excited and they're sharing with each other, which is really great. And then in the very top, those links that we were talking about in the other apps, all Kathy had to do was copy the link from the device or the platform she was using, which in this case was Tiny Cards, which is great for lower school kids. It's a very fun program. So the kids are working on flashcards. And then Kathy was able to, in that same post, also give a video that she had made that complemented. So her direct instruction was done asynchronously. So the kids we don't feel quite confident in having them on Zoom and then being able to maintain quality of instruction and classroom management. So because of that, you have Kathy doing a lot of the instruction beforehand through YouTube videos and posting some really amazing content that the kids are referencing before they actually go into the Tiny Cards activity. And those are side by side. So if you've never used it before, you can see it's as simple as creating a post, go back over, I'll show. Really wants me to customize stuff. So creating can be really, really straightforward. So if you wanted to, if I wanted to create new classwork, they make it really intuitive, very clean and simple. So in the way that Kathy created week 1 and week 2, I can create a new week as well. And in that new week, I can create an assignment, quiz, questions, materials, just post materials. The nice thing is a lot of the other tools like Padlet, for example, or Explain Everything or EduCreation, they'll actually give you the option to, from the app, to just create a post straight into Google Classroom. So it'll give the option. It'll say, do you want to create materials or an assignment? And you can go straight into it, which is really, really nice. So again, if you've never used a learning management system, or if you're scared that you're only going to be able to send things through email to your students, this is a really, really amazing option. And for those of you that maybe you already have a learning management system, there's still some uses in this here for you too. This is a great way for kids to create. Kids can create space on Google Classrooms as well. They can create their own posts and whatnot. So, you can use it as an ancillary service for kids to communicate and to share content as well. Depending on what your learning management system offers, that may or some of them have that functionality and some don't. So even if you're an experienced user of LMS, you can also find out a lot through Google Classroom as well, which is really, really great. So just keep in mind, the reason I show you Google Classroom first is all of these things, if you're not going to be able to touch base with your kids on a regular basis, it has to go somewhere. All this information needs to live in an organized way. And so for kids to be able to access something this clean, it's a reasonable expectation for a teacher to say to a family or student, hey, I can walk you through this. I can tell you where stuff is at, and you can be responsible and accountable for finding that information. As long as you have, a smartphone or again, we're working with the assumption that families have at least some access to some technology. And if that's not the case, we can brainstorm solutions for that. But this space is really for families and students that have at least some access. Okay. So going back, again, all of these things can be easily integrated into Google Classroom. So that's my recommendation for all of you. If you are looking for a way to deliver this content and you can't do it in real time, Google Classroom is a really, really amazing option for everybody. It's very easy to use for the students and for the teachers. Drawbacks, so some cons. The functionality is really basic. So it has some really great tools, but it doesn't compare to a lot of other learning management systems in terms of some of the content delivery that you can do on a Haiku or a Canvas or any of the other Blackboard systems that are out there. But it's very effective for what it does offer. And it's free, which is really lovely. Okay, so Flipgrid. Flipgrid, asynchronously, you don't know if you're going to be able to talk to your students. You don't know when you're going to see them. This is easily one of the most powerful tools that you can have out there for getting your instruction across and also giving reasonable, timely feedback, which is the most difficult thing of all during this time. So I've been using Flipgrid in my classroom, even before this situation, been using it for many years to great effect with the kids. It is a perennial favorite. It's always an exciting day when kids know that they're going to get to do some work on here. It's also great for student support. In addition to delivering content, I have student support rooms for all my grade levels where I have kids that can come in and they want to check in with me during this time and we can't schedule a call. It's a really, really lovely way of connecting with your kiddos. Okay. So I'm going to dive in. I'll give you a quick look. Again, today's not the day where we're going to go real heavy into application, how we're going to use these things, but just know that the things that you can do with this are pretty impressive. So if I were to So for example, right now, my students, they have a language exchange between themselves and a school. My 7th and 8th graders are exchanging with students at a middle school in Chengdu. And so right now they're able to get my instruction if I can't see them. They know what the general topics are. They know what the key functions are. So in our case, we have a lot of kids that parsing through grammatical concepts and whatnot is not easy for anybody. So we do a lot of comprehensible input, a lot of creative comprehensible input. And so Flipgrid allows me to continue being creative and fun and energetic in the way that I'm delivering my content, right? So I can share with students. So I can, now again, you may have various levels of experience, but I'm able to share a lot of different kinds of content. And this was all done through our work here on Flipgrid. So I didn't have to bounce around a lot of applications. I was able to do most of this in Flipgrid. And then share with them, give them pointers and things to talk about. So really condensing what I would normally do, in 30 minutes or 20 minutes of general instruction, I can put into that video. And then down at the bottom, the kids have the ability to respond at their own speed and also respond to each other, which is really, really great. So this scaffolds well as well. So obviously 7th and 8th graders can do a lot more with back and forth conversation where it's not as much of a burden on me. But you can also scaffold this. So I'll go and show you. So for example, beginning 5th grade students that have never done this before, their very first time doing it, and they need to have some instruction, but they don't want to be overwhelmed, which can be the case, when you're trying to take in 5 minutes of video content and then go to output, which is not great. You don't have the same amount of input leading up to the output. But it's still doable. The student can still work through it at their own pace, which is really, really nice. So for, my class of 2023, we've just been kind of dipping our toes in the water, right? And so they're obsessed with Dr. Phil. We told a story about Dr. Phil for some reason. But the kids, the same thing. If we're telling a story, we're doing a read aloud, and I want the kids to have, yes, they told a story about Dr. Phil and Bruce Lee going to get coffee. So I can actually interject throughout the story. I can allow the kids to watch as I enunciate. Let's see if we can jump. I can also splice in pictures from the story as well, if I can actually find a part that has that. So I can also, and that's, student drawn thing. So I took that from ClassKick. So the kids were drawing on ClassKick as we told the story through text. The kids drew that, and then I took a little screen cap of their picture and put it into the video. So you can also still have student input. There can still be student voice in your classes as well, which is really neat. So again, lots of really cool applications that we'll go into more on Tuesday, but just know that it's a really great way of getting feedback between you and your student, but also to allow students to give feedback to each other, which is the hardest thing. It's the one thing you miss out the most on, is that connection between kids. Okay, so I will keep, and then setup wise, in terms of setting up, if you have a Google account, super streamlined. You can just click a button and you're in with your Google account. Otherwise, setting up your own username, it's very, very straightforward. So if I am, for example, on my main grid here, to create a class takes moments. It doesn't take much time at all. All I have to do is name the class and then decide, how do I want my students to log in? We do have COPA laws, and so you need to make sure that if you are doing this with students, if students are going to post videos, that you're not doing public and PLCs. That's in violation of some pretty important laws on child protection on the internet. So what you would need to do is either have them log in with their school email, or if they don't have a school email, that's okay. You can just create a little code for them. You type their name in, and then I usually do something very simple, but unique enough that nobody will take their code or guess their code. But you can give them their own code. And then you can create whatever URL you want for it. So if you wanted to do practice class, you could do practice class. I forgot I'm still in one. Okay. Yeah, so you could type in, Jeremy's class, and then that will be their URL. So after that, all they have to know is that link. And then once they click on that link, it'll send them right to all of the assignments, all the new assignments that like that, right? Oh, sorry. So I'm going to select school. Actually, I'm going to go student ID just in case your school, because if it's school email, you don't have to do anything. You just put in the domain name. It's very straightforward. But if you had to create it through student ID, all you would have to do is type in their name and then create a code for them. So like Kathy Tien would be KT 2020. Add her. And now my class has a student in it. So you can add and subtract students. You can take students out as you need to, but that's really it. Just like that, I've already set up my first grid. You can literally get your first class up and running within 10 minutes. It's a really, really intuitive process. And again, there's the links again. You'll notice that, ta-da, right there. I can go straight to my Google Classroom. So if I have a Google Classroom, I can click on that link and it will actually take me to assuming that we're going to go ahead and skip that just because it's lagging a little bit and I don't want to eat up more of the Q&A time. But that's it right there. So after that, if I want, I can create any topic I want, and a topic is just your lesson. So the classroom is created, and in that classroom, I can do any number of things. If I don't want to create my own video, I can link to YouTube. So if there's a video on YouTube you want your kids to watch, you can just put the link in there, and then they can respond to whatever video that they were watching, which is really nice. You can upload other videos from your own collection. And then you can also, for those of you that, maybe you just want to do picture talk on it, you just want a really poignant picture of something that's going on in the world, you can also do picture talk on there, which is really nice. Do the title, tell them how long they have to respond. A total of 5 minutes is usually what I do, just to give them as much time as possible. And then you get 500 words where you can explain very simply what are the keywords and things that they need to be using. Don't feel like you have to do all your explanations there. They can also read more of the explanations from the link on Google Classroom or whatever place you're storing the link to your Flipgrid room. So once that's created, the kids can go in, and it's very easy for them to use too. So from their perspective, I'll just show you a finished link. So if a student is done, or if they want to, if a student is ready to create, I'll go ahead and go into this one here. From their perspective, and I'll go ahead and show you what a student sees. So if they're logged in, so this is what a student would see when they log in. Takes them right to the page. So all they have to do is type in their password, and then boom, they're in. They can see every lesson, simple drop down, every single lesson that has been posted in that room, so in that classroom. And then they can see, kind of looks like the Brady Bunch, looks like a TV show, all these kids that have posted back and forth and all their videos. It's pretty awesome. So if they want to post a new video, all they have to do is click that green button. That's it. And they can record from a laptop or from an iPad or from a phone, whatever they want. If they're logged in through the app, it's super, super easy. They just touch a green button and then start recording. And this is, the YouTube generation. So I'm using my mic and camera for a bunch of stuff, so it doesn't like that right now. But for kids that are posting on their own, the amount of errors that I've experienced over the years are negligible, very, very little, very few in number. So super easy for kids to navigate. And again, on Tuesday, we can go into how you can use this creatively. All right. So moving forward here, we have a couple more to show. And then the last few here, we won't be diving into for quite as long as we did with Flipgrid or Google Classroom. But they are important to note as well. This is one that I know is very popular in the language teaching community, but I also know it's one that when I talk to a lot of teachers around the state and around the country, it's one of those ones that people are aware of, but they're not exactly sure how to use it effectively, or even how to set it up. And so Edpuzzle, one of the nice things about this is it's linked into a lot of the video streaming services like YouTube, which is also owned by Google. So all these things, again, they try to make these as free and as accessible as possible. So a lot of these Google Suite and a lot of these Google related products, the functionality is clean and they're built with, students in mind. And then again, let's see if I can, there we go. Show you a very quick but sloppy example of what it can look like. So if you're setting up your Edpuzzle for the first time, again, it's just email registration. You'll notice that there is a basic, a pro teacher, and there's school districts as well. The school districts, as you can see, there's some more functionality, but honestly, I've been using the basic for years and it does more than what I need. So don't feel like you have to have the pro version or the school version in order to get the maximum use out of it. It's just nice. There's some really nice to haves if you have the ability to get more out of it. So to create a class is very simple. This is literally one of the cleanest user interfaces that you'll see out there. It's create a class, create a lesson. It's just that simple. So if I've already created a class, but if I were to want to create a new class, look at that. It goes right into my Google Classroom if I want. So I can actually pull from my Google Classroom. So if I already have a 5th grade class or a 6th grade or 7th grade class, I can just go pull it from Google Class and then they'll link together, which is really, really nice. We're just going to go ahead and dive into this one though. So if I have an assignment already made right here, I can add students to this, and I can do this. This is really cool. I can do this synchronously or asynchronously. So I can either watch this video live with my students at the same time they're doing it, or I can just assign it and have them doing it at their own time as well by sharing that assignment. But when a student is looking at it, so if Kathy were on here, all Kathy would need is to know that I'm on there. So if I send an email or in my Google Class, I said, be ready to go on Edpuzzle at 4 o'clock, then Kathy would know. And then as soon as Kathy's in there, Kathy would be able to start. So this video was taken straight from YouTube. So I didn't have to do a whole lot of searching because YouTube is built into Edpuzzle, which is really, really nice. So when the kids are watching the video, I can use authentic materials. I can have them going. Okay, so kids can watch up to a point. You'll see right down here where it has a question. So once I get to that point, it's going to stop. And forgive, I didn't have time to actually set up a full one today. So it's going to be a nonsense question, just a placeholder. But it'll stop the video and it'll give the kids the chance to answer the question. And then once they've answered, you can continue. So once that's done, it'll continue the video to the next question. And you can put as many questions in there as you want. So that's what the kid sees. To set that up is super, super straightforward. It's just like Google Classroom in that if you need to make something, you're just going to look for content. And so you can pull content from Edpuzzle, from YouTube, from Khan Academy, any one of those sources. For Chinese videos, more often than not, you're pulling from YouTube. If you're pulling from Edpuzzle, there are a number of Chinese teachers that have done some amazing work, and you can actually look up by subject and by topic as well what they've done. And then you can create your own content list as well. So as you're discovering videos that you like on here, you can just add them to your content. And you can do that by clicking add content. So I might have, like I have a lot of students that love gaming, and so we'll do story asks about characters in the games that they like to play, like Overwatch there. They have some really cool ones. Or if I have basic level students too, if I'm teaching younger level students, to be able to do, simple videos, it's really, really straightforward. You can see that some teachers have already done work on those videos. So below it'll show you, looks like Zhou Laoshi or Rai Laoshi, they've already done some work on this. So if you don't feel confident in creating your own questions, you can pull from other teachers and what they've shared here as well. So again, when I'm ready, all I have to do is I can assign that right over here in the corner. It says assign. And I can assign it to a specific class. And then you can set the date that it's due. So whenever it's due. And then again, this is all plugging right into my Google Classroom. So when a student logs into Google Classroom, they'll see the due date. And I didn't have to go back and forth between Google Classroom and Edpuzzle and Google Classroom. You can do one and it plugs right into the other, which is really, really lovely. Again, the user interface is super clean. So if I chose 6th grade is the class that I want to assign, and I'm going to assign it to all my students. It's very straightforward. So, and then I'll set the due date as tomorrow. Save it, and then, and then once I'm ready to assign it, you'll see just how fast it goes right over. Okay, and so that's already assigned. So the kids, when they go into their Google Classroom next time, they'll see that it's already in there. All right. So again, we'll dive a little bit more into that on Tuesday. Exactly, what are some of the other cool things that we can do linking between the two, so you can see what the format looks like. But for now, just know that they have that kind of functionality and accessibility. Okay. So a few more things here. We save these for last. Kahoot and Quizlet, these are things that a lot of teachers know. Some things that teachers maybe haven't thought of, though, are the fact that while this is definitely asynchronous, where you put out a study session or you have something set up where kids can study flashcards, you can also do things like Kahoot Live and Quizlet Live, where the kids are in real time. They're playing the game with you, where you can schedule, you can put the link into your Google Classroom, and the kids can jump in at the prescribed time for the homework date. And then they can actually join in either, they can go in on Quizlet into their classroom, which is easy enough to set up their, just a quick reminder to our friends to make sure that your mics are muted at this time. So you can set up a classroom quite easily. So just entering the class name. So okay, and then after that, it's as simple as adding students to that class. So if I have, and I'll show you some pre-made classes, but if I have my 7th grade class, for example, and if I wanted to add students, it's easy enough to add either by their email addresses, or I can just share a link with them. So if I wanted to copy that link and put it on Google Classroom, all they have to do is click on that link, and then they can do the work for you. So you don't have to worry about typing out all their email addresses. So once they've clicked on that link, they'll have access to all of those in that particular room, okay? So then once you're in there, again, if you're in on those lessons, you can do a lot of different things. You can have them doing independent learning, where they're doing the study sets on their own, they're playing games. You can monitor and track their progress, of course. But another really fun thing, and something that kids really like to do if you want to do it synchronously, is just play Quizlet Live. It's a great way to connect with your kids in a limited way, if you do want to do this in a synchronous fashion. But you can play the game with them, and all they have to know is that code. So you can share that. You can even send the QR code over to them as well. And then once they have that code, they'll all start signing in, and you can play that game as many times as you want. And then they have that touch point with you where they feel connected to their teacher, which is important. Kahoot is the same thing. So when you are logging into Kahoot, you can play those games live as well. Kahoot, obviously, more than just doing flashcards and one word or one phrase review with kids is really nice if you're trying to review whole stories, or if you've done a read aloud, or if you want them to if you're wanting to check for more complex comprehension of texts, which is really, really hard to do in distance learning and in a lot of situations. This is a great way for you to check that in real time, which is really nice. These are tools that are fairly ubiquitous, and they're things that teachers use a lot. They're free. They're really user-friendly. There's not a lot of bells and whistles to these, but they're also,
I think even a lot of veteran teachers can underestimate, especially in these situations, how powerful they can be when you don't know how often you're going to see your kids, and you want to keep them, you want to keep their brains moving in the language as much as possible. So I would encourage even, veteran teachers that, there's that Dr. Phil again. If you were going to do, if you wanted them to, be interacting together in some fashion, but you don't know if they'll be able to do that in a real-time environment, then Kahoot and Quizlet can be really good options as well during this time. And again, it can, keep that interpretive function going. And there's a lot of different functionality here too that we'll go into on Tuesday. We'll talk about some cool things you can do. Okay, so we are now at 5:24, and so we did say 5:10, 40 minutes. So I want to honor the fact that we do have enough time for questions and answers. I'm also happy to push out a little bit to go an extra 10. But I guess the last couple things that I'll throw out there, this is another one, just like Quizlet and Kahoot, people might say, oh, that's very basic. And it is. But it's also, you shouldn't overlook it. So what you saw earlier in Google Classroom with Tian Laosher and what she was able to create and post in her Google Classroom, she was able to put on YouTube and pair it with other activities. So if you don't think you're going to be able to do, general instruction in real time, then, and you don't feel quite comfortable doing Flipgrid yet, then YouTube is a fine way to get things going in the meantime when you're getting your feet and you're just trying to get started on things. Anybody can log into YouTube with their Gmail account. And anybody with an iPad can do the same with the YouTube app. So the really nice thing about it is, if you are sitting at any computer with a camera, it has an onboard recording and video editing function. So you can record your lesson in real time, and then you can also post it quite quickly. So we'll go ahead and give you just a short, quick example here. It's probably not going to like the fact that I'm running so many video things with my microphone, so it might not let me record it right now. But to find yourself, to get your recording underway, it's pretty straightforward. You're just going to look for that camera button right up in the top corner when you log in. See how I'm logged in already? So if I wasn't logged in, I would just go into, just log in real quick, and then make sure that your account is up and running, and then click on that camera. And it'll take you pretty quickly, where you can either do an Instacast, which is really nice. Your students can watch you in real time as you're doing it, if you want to do it that way. If you think they'll be able to log in at the right time, they can do it that way. Otherwise, you can just create your own video in the moment. Maybe you feel confident with video editing software. You may have seen on Flipgrid that some of those videos I have were edited. I did those in other programs as well. But if you don't feel confident at all, and this is your first time recording videos like this, you can use the YouTube onboard applications to do this. You can do some pretty cool basic things with it that are still very effective and can create content that's engaging for your students. Many of you, let's see here, should be able to, there we go. Okay. Don't use this as an estimate for how long it'll take you. I'm running a tremendous amount of programs on here right now. So it'll be much faster for you than it will be for here. So you have the option. So you can either upload a video from your documents if you want, or you can also create your own as well. You can also record your own. Okay. So example, we'll go ahead and do. Oh yeah, so right now it's going to be a little picky about me just because I'm running so many different programs. So in any case, don't worry about that. We'll give some more examples on Tuesday of what that can look like, but just know that this is a really great tool for you to use at that time as well. Or if you don't feel comfortable with Flipgrid, or if this is your first time editing videos, there's some really, really cool things that you can do. All right, guess what? We are at the end. So in addition, these are paid things. I will put these out there. I will say before I give any of the pros, I'll just go ahead and say right out the gate that the con is that you have to pay for these. If you have the luxury and the benefit of being able to have a school that will comp accounts for kids, will pay for kids to have these are awesome. For younger kids, iChinese Reader having level readers, these aren't the only ones. There are other level online readers you can use. But the setup process on these are very easy. The other one for those of you that teach secondary level students, or even fourth, fifth grade students, HSK leveled readers through the Chairman's Bow are wonderful. The things that you can do with them in terms of creating flashcards and paced readings and assessments and any number of things, all at levels that make sense for the kids, so that you can help at this time to teach kids how to do 85% comprehensible texts, so they can start to recognize what 85% comprehensible looks like, while also using authentic materials. Chairman's Bow is a really, really great way to go. I won't dive into that as much, just because it is cost prohibitive. There is a price attached to it. If you have the ability to get that, the folks, Oliver Leach and others over at Chairman's Bow are wonderful. Folks at iChinese Reader are very pleasant as well. You can get a lot of information from those people as well. But interpretive reading and listening, these are tremendous, things to be providing for kids at this time. Okay, so now I don't think I'm going to be able to be with my kids at all. I don't know schedules. This is just a mess. My whole world is upside down. What the heck am I supposed to do? Independent study resources are things that we can provide for kids. We can't track progress or proficiency over time, but we at least know that we've provided them with some resources. So if we can't do asynchronous or synchronous instruction, these are really just a handful, and I'll try to provide more as well, but this is just kind of a start. But just some simple thoughts on some things that teachers can be using at this time. Things like Anki and Skritter, which plug into a lot of different curriculums. If you're a textbook-based curriculum, or if you use any number of instructional tools, paperback instructional tools, Skritter is really great. Anki is really great. Fluent U is another one that it has a paid and a non-paid version, and so there's limited videos and other exercises that kids can do. And if their parents are able, they can also, if they're interested, or if your school is able to offer some support, you can do that. Slow Chinese is another great one. It's free, and it offers it's more for your more advanced learners. There are some basic level things, but in general, your secondary schools are going to get more use out of it. But it has pacing, and it has some really great podcasts on there as well, which are really awesome. You can create your own playlists, YouTube playlists of different videos, commercials, of cartoons and TV shows that are really great that you can provide for your kids. Podcasts, there's some really, really great podcasts out there. For example, we get Slow Chinese as a podcast, but there's the other one, Pastimes of Youth, is a really good one as well. There's a lot of really amazing materials out there podcast wise, and in the weeks to come, I'm gonna be putting together more comprehensive documentation on these types of independent study resources to share with communities. In my library, we use PowerSchool in our school, and so I have a devoted section where it's called Chinese Language Learner Tools, and they can go podcast, movies, video games, all the things that kids would want to do in their own non-targeted independent learning. I'm going to try and put together something comprehensive to share with the community. So don't feel like this is comprehensive. This is just some things to think about. There's also a lot of free audiobooks online that you can access. Amazing things like Clavis Seneca that have been around that I find don't get enough time in the sun, that are really, really well put together, that have daily life readings and a lot of different topic areas and recordings of people reading, and some really, really great materials. So don't feel like you are alone, or that you don't have resources, because we have a very caring community of people that are here. In just the last few days, the amount of work that's gone into trying to put together things across the country has been really, really just overwhelming and beautiful to see. Your friends here at CLTA-WA, we are happy to help in whatever way we can. This is just the start of a 3-part conversation. So just know that if you didn't get all your questions answered today, and we're going to go into Q&A right now, that we will continue the conversation Tuesday, Thursday, but these recordings will also go up. You can also join, we have our mailing list that goes out, and we have communications going back and forth. If you are if you sign up on our website, and you join as a member, you can also be a part of that. We have all kinds of different ways that you can get in contact. But don't feel like you're alone. That you're an island unto yourself. You have lots of people that care and are there to help support. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the Q&A session. It's 5:34. I'm happy to go to 6:10. 6:15-ish, to make sure that we honor that. We said we give about 40 minutes for Q&A, and I want to hold to that. So let's go ahead and we're going to start this, but I'm going to ask a couple of things. One is that you mute your microphone until your name is called out. The second is that you type your question into the chat first, so I have a chance to kind of get my head around it first. And then that also tells me what order I should be answering into. That helps me organize things. And then when I do call on your name, feel free to unmute your mic, and then if you want, you can turn on your camera as well. And then you can ask your question. So let the questions begin. And I'm going to take a big drink of tea now because I'm feeling parched. That was a lot of talking. And I can see all of your questions coming in. Oh, there we go. As they start coming in. You may also choose, if you want to raise a hand in the app, you can just raise your hand in the app too. That's okay. That'll help me out as well. And then I'll scroll back and forth to see who has questions. It's a really great question. Sheen, if you want to unmic, you can ask that question. So the question sounds like.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my question, I'm looking at you. You are looking at your right, and you're looking at your left, and you're looking at the camera. So I'm wondering, like, do I need that many devices, you know, in order to, you know, do this synchronize? Mm-hmm. So if you can show me and tell me what should I prepare? Thank you.
The short answer to that is no, you do not need to have the copious amounts of things that I do. I do a lot of other things with podcasting and video editing, and so I just happen to have I have the boom mic and I have the nice headphones and all that. But honestly, I also there's very simple things. If you want really clear audio quality, you can consider getting a mic, and you can get simple little ones like, you know, at your local tech store or online on Amazon, but it doesn't require that. Honestly, I can do everything that I've shown you today from my iPad. So it's a nice thing to have because I have so many things I was trying to present today, and just to have everything in order for you, I do. But on a typical day in my class, if I'm doing, for example, if I'm doing a Zoom lesson, I can do it completely from my iPad, or just from this computer device, from my laptop in front of me. I've even done it from my phone. And that includes asynchronous too. So Flipgrid, if I needed to get something together real quick, I can do that from my phone. Some of the things like Quizlet. So in terms of like how much you're going to need to buy mics and headphones, most devices now come with an onboard camera and with a microphone, and they're quite clear. They're not going to be, you know, this kind of level of clarity, but it's still going to be perfectly clear for your students, and they're going to be able to understand you just fine. Most of the time, I'm not using these with my kids, so don't feel like you have to buy a bunch of stuff. Can you give me a thumbs up if that answered your question?
Yes, thank you. But all of a sudden I can't find the heads up. Hands up.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
For you, are you using a computer?
Yes.
If you tap on your screen, there'll be a little bar on the bottom that pops up, and then you can click on the more option. It's on the share. I think it's right in the share.
Okay, so you cannot start screen share.
Oh, my apologies. Not share. Not share, but maybe chat. It's one of the bottom. I think it might be chat.
Okay.
It's reactions.
Reactions. Thank you. I'm looking at the teacher mode right now. Thank you.
Okay.
I couldn't think of
I got it.
You okay?
Here you go.
Perfect. Perfect. Wonderful. So in general, if you are able to use Zoom, having kids fluent in using those functions is super important. When you're talking about classroom management, as all teachers know, good classroom management starts with proactive expectations and guidelines. It's good class culture, right? It's being proactive. So on day one, right away, you can set your Zoom to mute everybody. And then you just have them when they're just like when you're in class, if you're doing story asking or if you're doing like some kind of comprehensible input activity, in the beginning, they don't know how to respond. So you can have them do thumbs up, thumbs down in the beginning. So it's the same basic idea. So most of the time, language students, they get into it pretty quick. It's a lot of semaphore and nonverbals and stuff. So yeah. So another question came in saying, how many devices are you having right now? How many devices am I using? So that's from Wenxin Huang Gillis. I'm using a laptop. It's very basic Lenovo, very low end. I'm using a iPad Pro, which I used to demonstrate some of the apps earlier. And that's it. Just those two. And I happen to have two monitors hooked up to my laptop, but that's just, you don't need that. Yeah, I really like for a lot of the stuff that we've done today, and most of your iPads can do quite a bit, and tablets as well, other tablets. This is a really good question. So, Wu Lao Shi just asked, which app is easier for students with special needs? So differentiation is a lot of the reason why I started using a lot of these apps long before. It wasn't really about remote learning or trying to do flipped model or hybrid classrooms. It was really to try and offer a differentiated model for kids, because our school has a broad spectrum of learning differences. And so because of that, we started using things like ClassKick, for example, for students with dyslexia. Because I can record myself reading every instruction that I have in there. I can put in a recording of myself reading. Or if I have, if there's auditory processing, or if it's if some students are nonverbal, in our school right now, we don't really have any of those, but it's still things that you can address through things like Flipgrid or through things like Padlet, where a student can communicate with you in real time. If it's mobility, if there are mobility needs, and you have students that need to have a little bit of extra support just going through the basic functionality. These are things that you can easily help coach support agents and adults and guardians that can help the student through the process as well. They're all pretty straightforward in terms of like addressing different learning modalities and learning differences. Most of the tools we've seen today have some functionality that can address the needs of a variety of students. Again, they're blank canvases. You can do a lot of really creative things with them. I know that's a very vague way to answer your question. You can, if that didn't quite answer it, you can also ping back and say, yeah, Xin, your question.
Okay. So can you just quickly tell me what is good for interpersonal and what is good for presentational and interpretive?
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
all those tools?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So the short answer is, for most of the first section for the synchronous learning tools that we took a look at, let's take a look right here. Zoom obviously is great for interpersonal communication. If you want that real-time feedback and you want to be able to assess a kid's ability to power through the effective filter and to be able to deliver output on the spot in true interpersonal fashion, not presentational where they have time to think about it, Zoom is a really great method to do that. If you don't have that option, Padlet and Quizlet are really great for at least getting them to do some interpersonal writing, where they have to respond in the moment. So with Quizlet, they can go right back and forth with you in the moment. They have to give a response, right? Either through typing or writing on the screen. With Padlet, they have to respond to each other. So you're seeing that organic conversational ability in interpersonal versus that direct dialogue back and forth, which is really nice. Both of those are really great for that. Explain Everything is also, kids can also access the screen that you're working on. But again, with Explain Everything, with Padlet, and with Quizlet, or I'm sorry, Quizlet, with ClassKick, they can also become presentational mode exercises for the kids. It just depends on the time frame you give them. So if you're telling a kid that they have until the next day to work on the ClassKick assignment, then that's a presentational assignment. But if you're communicating right in the moment with them, that's interpersonal. So interpretive for all three of these are Zoom, ClassKick, Padlet, Explain Everything. Those are all, of course, the kids are getting a lot in terms of interpretive reading and listening, because Explain Everything, you can record yourself as you're telling the story. And you can also ask follow-up questions in their exercise where you're testing for comprehension. Padlet, interpretive reading. And, technically, if you wanted to, you could get creative and you could have them sending recordings back and forth on that too, because they can record. So you can also do, interpretive listening on that as well as interpretive reading. ClassKick, the amount of things you can do, it's just a blank whiteboard. So, you can do audio and you can do text on that. So it's kind of the same concept. In terms of the same thing for the exact same things for whiteboard and for OneNote, but you have to pay. That's really the only thing that would keep you from using those. For the asynchronous ones, Google Classroom, it's mostly presentational and interpretive things that you're going to be doing on there. Flipgrid is kind of this weird in-betweener. It's basically presentational because they have time to think about it, but depending on how fast their turnaround is, you can make the argument. The interesting thing there is that with Flipgrid, it kind of feels sometimes like a hybrid model, because like I give kids parameters. They have to post a certain number of posts within a certain amount of time. And so, yeah, they can formulate in the same way you would with presentational communication. So it is still presentational, but it also engages them in a slightly different way too, in that you're trying to teach the kids how to listen around things they don't know and to communicate organically. And so it feels has a kind of an interpersonal twinge to it too, which is kind of neat. They can also, text in there too. They can send messages in there. So it's limited interpersonal writing or presentational writing as well. At Puzzle, that's interpretive listening and reading. Quizlet and Kahoot, that is interpretive listening and reading as well. YouTube, same as Flipgrid, kind of. And then obviously iChinese Reader and Chairman's Power can be interpretive mode as well. Does that answer your question, Sheen?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, any other questions? I know it's a lot of information, so if you need a second to process, please take your time. Is Google Classroom a kind of power school? I'm assuming you're in that Haiku family of learning management systems. Our school is as well. We also have used Haiku/Power School Learning for a number of years. It is a very it's kind of a bare bones version. What you can do on Google Classroom, you can do on PowerSchool, but not always the other way around. So there's some things that you can, like discussion boards and assessments and things that are kind of similar in a few ways, but there's just added functionality. That being said, I also think that Google Classroom experiences fewer errors. Sometimes PowerSchool will, from time to time, because it has so many functions and there's so many different things you can do on it, when you're trying to organize content and deliver it to students, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming, and depending on how the teacher's using it. And then it can also sometimes feel a little bit, I'm speaking from my own experience, can just feel a little bogged down. So like, for example, I can show you, the difference between, in our school, we have both Google Classroom and PowerSchool. My PowerSchool page looks like this. So I have on for every grade level, I can divide it up by, oops, didn't mean to unpublish. Need to log in anyways. So I can organize it just like with Google Classroom. I can organize that in whatever way I want, but the flow is different. So PowerSchool is going to tab everything up, whereas Google Classroom is going to flow down, kind of like a forum wall, like a chat forum wall. So for me, like the benefit of PowerSchool in that case would be, the organization of content, kind of like a Wikipedia page in a way, versus on Google Classroom where it's more like a general chat forum or website forum. But then you have calendars, which both of them have, and yeah, they basically do the same thing. But in general, I find that speed, and then because it's such a simpler design, you find fewer errors in Google Classroom. I hope that answers your question. But yes, Google Classroom is a learning management system, just like PowerSchool. Great place either one's great for organizing your content. Again, remember the goal of this is you have all these amazing resources we've talked about today. You need to have them organized in a way that your kids can access them in a way that is sustainable and repeatable, so that they know where to go to and they can do it again and again. So it can be different content, but the general layout is going to be similar. So you don't have to worry about having to teach them over and over again how to access content. So yeah, so if you're in the boat, so Karen Ulausch is saying, we have, we're a PowerSchool school. Even if you're a PowerSchool school, you can still use Google Classroom if you find that it's, talk to your administrators in your school, and if you find that you like the user interface more, feel free, to use that. But make sure you've cleared it with your administrators. But they both have their pros and cons. Yes, I can go back to the previous one. Can you specify what the previous one is? The resource one. Oh, on my PowerSchool page. Yes. So this is something I keep. I curate a database for kids, and in that database, I have dictionaries, flashcards, music, television shows, movies, magazines, comics, books, games, tech and apps, podcasts, writing resources, grammar and vocab. It's all stuff that they can go to passively and they can access. So, there's a variety of dictionaries that kids can use. So if they don't have, like in school, they have an iPad, so they can use Pleco, or they can use, a variety of different dictionary apps. But if they don't have access to those and they need to just go to one on a website, I try to provide some really good dictionary options at different levels for them, in different modes, some picture dictionaries as well. Suggestions for movies and TV shows, links to streaming TV services, so kids can take a look with some suggestions on things that maybe they might want to watch. Music suggestions as well, different artists and different genres. I also I keep an Apple playlist for my Apple Music, and on Spotify as well, because some kids use Spotify. And I allow kids to access my playlist that we use in class anyway. So it's the songs they hear every single day. We have a list of probably about 50 to 75 different songs that I specifically choose for different moments in class. So then kids can, and this is great at home. Like if you have music you love, share it with them now. This is a great time for them to explore and to do untargeted learning. If you provide, so for, my kids, they can just click on that link and it'll send them straight to my Google or to my Apple playlist, which is really great. Next question says, can you share some tips of where and how to find good video clips with different topics, themes to be used on Edpuzzle? Yes, there are on the CLTA-WA.org website. There is a link to resources on videos and movies. And a good number of them, I believe, are housed on YouTube. In addition to that, you can also, if you're on, go back to Edpuzzle real quick. What I found in my own experience is to find a broader range of videos is go just to regular YouTube and search, and then find the name of the video, and then go back into Edpuzzle sometimes and to look. It has a preponderance towards looking for English titles before Chinese titles, which is kind of strange, but it will also pull up Chinese titles as well. it's just not as effective. And so if you already know the name of the video, it's easier to find it. You also make sure that when you're selecting that you're choosing between Edpuzzle and YouTube. Those are two different things, even though they're technically not. So if you're searching from YouTube, generally speaking, it's going to be a mixed bag. But for other places to find, yeah. So we can go, when I mentioned earlier that this is something that we have a few different resources. I think we even have through CLTA-WA, we also have another document that has a list of videos by thematic type and whatnot that can be accessed through the CLTA-WA site. But for Edpuzzle in particular, just know what the name of so go into YouTube and search, and most of the time you'll be able to pull it up pretty quickly. Do you have trouble? I'm reading into your question a little bit if you're having trouble finding things on Edpuzzle.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I already set up Edpuzzle accounts with all my classes, but over the years I found I use it only a few times. So the very reason is I have a hard time finding the right thing. On YouTube, either not content correct, not the current theme they are talking about, or it's just not too long. Not too long. I can only use this. So just so very difficult finding the right one.
Yeah. I find I've had that experience too. When you're looking for videos, it's an interesting thing that if a Chinese video has an English title and a Chinese title, if you put in the English title, timer went off. Sorry. Thank you. Usually if it has an English title as well as a Chinese title, if I put the English title in, it will pop up. If it doesn't happen to have an English title, usually, username will get it to come up, but not always. So I won't deny that can be an issue at times, specifically for Chinese. But usually if there is even a few words in the title that are English, if you put those in, you can usually get it to come up.
Thank you. That's good to know.
The next question says, let's see here. There's a page with all the resources, Slow Chinese, etc. Can you show again? Yeah, absolutely. So the independent study resources referenced in this question, this is not a comprehensive list. As you can see, that database that my kids have on there, I have a bunch more that I can share. This is going to take me a little while to curate it. I like to make things palatable and nice to look at. But for now, eStroke is a wonderful tool. If a kid has a smartphone or an iPad, one of my favorite things of all time is eStroke. Let's see if it'll actually let me share my screen. I'm going to try and share my, it says no again. Trying to share with too many devices, unfortunately. But eStroke, you know what? I will try one more time. I really would like for you to see it. So here we go. Let me know if, so what you're going to want to do is, there's 2 Jeremy Smiths here and that big wall of Jeremys. So on my iPad, you should be able to see my iPad screen now. Let's see here. I see it popping up on mine, so you should be able to see it. Let's see here. Julian, can you see that? Can you tell me if you can see that or not? Did I get a thumbs up? Somebody give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, we can see your screen with
wonderful
picture with Bob.
Thank you. That's great news. So a few things here. One is Pleco, one's eStroke. eStroke, if you haven't used it before, it's very, very straightforward. It's easy for kids to use. If they have an iPad, all they need to know is the pinyin for the character, and it'll give a character animation, as well as the kid can also practice stroke order, and then they can even take a test as well. And if they do it wrong, then nothing pops up. But if they do it right, it'll fill it in. So this is, again, right now, I know a really tough thing for a lot of teachers is, how do we get more, practice with stroke order and whatnot? If they have a device available, if they have a phone, the smartphone, or if they have an iPad, then this is really, really a great tool for them to use. And it's very easy to teach them how to use it too. This is something we use anyways in class. Kids know that, when we're working on writing activities, that we require good stroke order, and, their characters need to be aligned and look nice. And so they use this quite often, even in class. But outside of class, it becomes invaluable. This is nice that you can actually see the screen now. Because then, things like whiteboard, which you didn't get to see earlier, you can also take a look at. Very clean format, easy to add students and whatnot. But yeah, and also you can see how clear it is. Somebody asked earlier about tech devices and what you can use. Well, this is just a simple iPad, and you can do everything I've done today from the iPad, which is really, really nice. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and can I ask everybody to please make sure that their mics are muted? Okay. Other questions? So let's go back over, share screen again. Okay. So let's see here. We have any other questions? Nope. I don't see any up right now, but I'm happy, again, like I said, we are at 6, but I'm happy to take the next 10, 15 for any additional questions that you have. Again, remembering that, today is not, we didn't do a deep dive into types of activities. This was just kind of an overview of the basics of what is out there and how they can be generally used. The question is, what other resources do you think are easy for students to use? Well, I would say this presentation will be shared. So it looks like this person was just able to join us. So the recording of this presentation will be posted on our website, on the CLTA-WA website, as well as the presentation. And so I would recommend at that time, you can take a look at some of the apps and websites that we used leading up to this. But for now, if there's something in particular you're looking for, you can always send a specific question about, for reading, writing, listening, speaking, interpersonal, interpretive, presentational, what kinds of things are you looking for your students for their learning experience? So if you could maybe frame those in that question with one of those in mind, I can maybe point you to one of the things that we talked about earlier. Any other questions? These are all really great questions.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. You take care. Yeah. So again, I know, take a moment. It's a lot of information to parse through. But if you have additional questions, you can also, feel free to, if you haven't already joined the both the WeChat group where teachers are communicating, and also through our organization, CLTA-WA. By joining our organization, you also have access to our email distribution list, where I send out resources and links to opportunities and other things all the time. Our fees are very, very low. Our one-time yearly fee is quite affordable for the amount of content you get in workshops and professional development and whatnot, and then just access to a great community of teachers that are here to support. So yeah, does my school encourage teachers to do that? Oh, share a list of recommended YouTube videos for Chinese learning with us again. Yeah, so that is, that's a really big one. So the trick with YouTube is things are getting put up and pulled down all the time. So if you took a look at my, generally speaking, just real quick, pull up. I'll just to give you as a very concrete example of what that can look like. If I pulled up my YouTube, just a general YouTube playlist, I try to mix it up quite a bit, but you can make your own decision. As far as like what my school, if they encourage teachers to do that, I would say that they don't prohibit us. There's nobody saying going out there telling us to actively pursue like building YouTube playlist collections or anything. But at the same time, I think most educators will acknowledge that there's a tremendous amount of content out there for students to. So let's go ahead and. So just general playlists. I mean, you can find an amazing amount of things. Some really, really good ones can be found, and there's some great TV shows that you can share with kids. Videos on slice of life, daily life kind of things. I really like, there's some really great comedy groups out there now that they speak in pretty clear and news media standard Mandarin, which is really great. A lot of music videos, which are really wonderful. TV commercials are big. That's always a student favorite. But yeah, so again, when we come out with that list of resources that you saw here today, you'll also see some suggestions and things of that nature too. Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. We can find your video in YouTube. Do you mean like, can you find my channel?
最近应该很多人都有听说，在全世界各地呢，因为这个肺炎病毒的疫情呢，非常多的这人被歧视、被骚扰，甚至被攻击。本人非常非常的谴责，非常的。
Does somebody have their videos on right now? Could somebody please mute their mic?
神对待。那么在此呢，老师也要就是感谢写信来关心我们美国现在。
See here, I'm gonna have to force mute somebody's mic.
我个人其实觉得。
Let's see here. There we go. Again, so if you're doing a Zoom class, that will happen from time to time. You'll have a student that will accidentally bump their mic and they might not realize it. So just know that it's easy enough for you as a teacher. If I see that person was, unmuted, it's easy enough for me to jump in and to mute their just by clicking on the mic on their face. Okay. All right. So I just saw you show that in YouTube, so we can check that in YouTube. I'm guessing you're talking about like what videos I have in my YouTube. I don't typically, just because I post student videos and whatnot on there, I usually keep my videos private on there. So, but I also, like, if people are looking for videos, that's something I can consider sharing too, moving forward. Maybe putting together a separate list for public consumption. Yeah. Okay. What else? So with our last few minutes here, if there's anything that you would like to dig in a little bit more on, any resource in particular or a function that you saw, or getting set up, like just the general setup process, you feel free. You can talk basic, or you can dive in and go, you can start to ask next level questions too if you want. But we will on Tuesday, we'll be going over more practical applications and some interesting examples of how to use each of these. Okay, well, I'm going to take it that we've had a little bit of silence on the chat front. Haven't seen a lot of questions coming out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and say that everybody's asked all the questions that they want for today. If that is the case, I just want to take this moment to say thank you all for coming out today. I know that there's a lot of questions still that maybe you haven't even thought of yet. So in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us at CLTA-WA. You can also, we'll have the link posted. We'll send out, you can find a lot of these resources at CLTA-WA.org in our shared files by classroom teachers. We'll have those resources available, including the presentation and the recording that you heard today. And then if you have more questions, you can always reach out to me at any time if you're curious about what other resources or information we can offer you in helping you develop your practice. We're happy to help in any way we can. So in the meantime, we wish you all the best. We know that there's a lot of planning going on right now, and that teachers are are all adapting to a very new situation. Nobody has all the answers, but again, together we can come up with some pretty good answers in this situation. It's great to be a part of a community of great caring educators. I thank you all for joining and participating today. I hope this was helpful. And we do look forward to those of you that are joining us on Tuesday, seeing you then. And if you're not joining us on Tuesday, we look forward to seeing you at some point in the future and being able to collaborate and work together, building our community of amazing teachers. So in the meantime, you all take care, and we will see you soon. And then I'm going to keep the room up for another moment here if you're slowly filtering out, and then I'll be dropping the connection in the next minute or so. I'll be ending the meeting for all.